Hey everyone, Joe Waxman here. And in this video, I want to look at the chart of James Dean, Mr. Rebel Without a Cause. All right. Guys, please hit the like button if you can, if you're able to, and subscribe if you have not already. Okay. Now, I was going to do Che Guevara, but there's some confusion about his date of birth, and I always want to be 100% sure, or as sure as I can be, about the accuracy of the time of birth. Otherwise, I'm trying to make sense of nonsense, and that's not good, because then it's like poisoning the well. You get bad information, then you start to believe things that are wrong, and so I don't want to do that. That would be bad for my education, and bad for your education, and bad for everyone's education. All right, James Dean. And the reason why I chose James Dean is because I actually know that they both have Uranus conjunct descendant. They both have Uranus conjunct descendant in Aries, if that's correct, of Che Guevara's. And interestingly, while I'm talking about it, James Dean, spoiler alert, James Dean was bisexual. There's many accounts of that. And Che Guevara was a psychopath, homophobe, who imprisoned homosexuals and many other people, and killed them and many other people. So it's funny how the left idolizes Che Guevara when he was like really a psychopath, and he killed and tortured and enslaved many people. So anyway, that's Che Guevara, the shorthand version. I mean, he was a revolutionary. In any case, we're talking about James Dean. All right. American actor, cultural icon of teenage disillusionment, social estrangement, as expressed in the title of his most celebrated film, Rebel Without a Cause, which he started as troubled teenager Jim Stark. Two other roles that defined him were East of Eden and Giant. After his death in a car crash, on September 30th, 1955, Dean became the first actor to receive a posthumous Academy Award nomination for Best Actor in his role of East of Eden. Upon receiving a second nomination for the role in Giant the following year, Dean became the only actor to have posthumous acting nominations. 2 posthumous acting nominations. Interesting. In 1999, the American Film Institute ranked him 18th best male movie star of the golden age of Hollywood. All right. Early life of Hollywood. So he's an only child. Let's see. He moved around a lot as a child. 6 years after his father left to become a dental technician. So 6 years after his father had left farming to become a dental technician, Dean moved with his family to Santa Monica, California. Moved around a lot, spent several years. Dean was very close to his mother. She was the only person capable of understanding him. And then she was suddenly struck with acute stomach pain and quickly began to lose weight. She died of uterine cancer when Dean was 9 years old. Unable to care for his son, Dean's father sent him to live with an aunt and uncle on their farm in Fairmount, Indiana, where he's raised in their Quaker household. His father served in World War II and later remarried. Dean sought the counsel and friendship of local Methodist pastor who seems to have formed an influence upon Dean, especially in his future interest in bullfighting, car racing, and theater. They had an intimate relationship, which began in his senior year of high school and endured many years. The alleged sexual relationship was suggested in the book about James Dean. It was reported that to Elizabeth Taylor that he was sexually abused by a minister approximately 2 years after his mother's death. Other reports suggest that he was either sexually abused as a child or as a late teenager. Okay, so a lot of sexual abuse by a supposed holy man. I love how these holy men are perverts so often, and people still are devout religious believers. It makes no sense to me. They claim that religion's going to save them when all the people who are the middlemen of these religions are raping boys and stuff. I don't get it, but it would seem like if the Bible or religion, or I'm not picking on any one religion, but if religion was going to save you, then why were all these priests and holy men so corrupt? Right? It's pretty contradictory that it's not working. In other words, it's like not doing what it says it's supposed to do. They're not getting better, they're getting worse. They're worse than your average people. Priests are raping boys. I mean, that's something that's just like that's like you're a devil, you're Satan if you're doing that. So like you're supposed to be holy, but you're actually Satan. So I don't know. All right. His performance at school was exceptional, and he was a popular student. Played on basketball, varsity baseball, basketball, drama, public speaking, and high school forensics association. He moved back to California, lived with his father and stepmother, enrolled in pre-law, transferred to UCLA, changed his major to drama, and he was estranged from his father. Let's see, and then started acting. And then he started, his acting career started slow. He got, minor roles, and then just, gradually picked up from there. He studied method acting, and then he was cast in East of Eden, and that went well. And then he was sort of typecast for Rebel Without a Cause, because it's a similar role, I guess, of being a angsty, rebellious teenager. And that went well. And then he went and did, some of the things that's kind of interesting is that, where is this? In any case, that he went off script for part of the movie, or a lot of the movie, and they kept it. Like he just went off script, did his own thing, and they were like, it was like even more powerful than the script. So that's kind of interesting, right? Like he's rebelling against the script, he's doing his own thing, and it works. Awesome. And yeah, so 3 big movies is basically it. And going off script and just being spontaneous and succeeding at that. Right, what else? Okay, bisexual, lots of bisexuality, lots of women, lots of men, lots of experimentation, and car racing. He was into car racing, and he was into speeding, and then he crashed, and then he died. So that's basically James Dean. Let's look. And he had a lot of famous friends and girlfriends, and everybody loved him, and he loved everybody intimately. All right. Sun in Aquarius conjunct Black Moon Lilith. And okay, so like Aquarius, right? Aquarius is like Aquarius. Definitely not. Aquarius is pretty gender neutral. So if you're going to go both ways, Aquarius is probably not a bad sign to have that as your sun sign. And Black Moon Lilith, sex symbol, of course, right? Black Moon Lilith is often associated with female sexuality, but hey, in Aquarius conjunct the sun, it's probably going to translate into Aquarius. Aquarius sex symbol, right? 11th house is the house of career success and groups, networks, social thinking, like socio-political causes, thinking big, right, like that. And yes, has a really nice trine to the south node. So when young, he's going to be all about relationships and social groups and popular within groups. Group leader. Sun in the 11th can often mean somebody who's like the community leader, the group leader, the leader of a organization, of things like that. Right? Sun is ruling the 5th house, so great for acting, performance, entertainment, anything like that. Right? Within groups and networks, and career success, obviously. Yeah. Moon in Scorpio. So Moon is mother, Scorpio is death, 8th house is death, and he's got the very natural zodiac because Aries ascendant. So everything's doubled over. It's not mixed. You know, with most other ascendants other than Aries, you're getting a lot of mixing, right? Different influences coming together. With the Aries ascendant, it's just very it's everything's natural, everything's doubly influenced. Same, right? Scorpio, 8th house, Moon, you know, very intimate with mother. Scorpio's intimate, very close with mother, close relationship. Scorpio is a relationship sign, and 8th house as well. So intimate relationships with mother, death as well, death of mother, right? Moon also has some, at least one bad aspect, square to Mars, which is the ascendant lord. So yeah, that's difficult. So yeah, we can see death of mother. We can also see that his moon, his inner mind, his emotions, his emotional needs are very intense. Moon is not in good dignity in Scorpio. It's opposite. It's exaltation, so it's debilitated in Scorpio. So we can see like he was troubled, right? His mind is very troubled. He lost his mother when he was young, and Moon is ruling the 4th house, right? So early on, it's you know, things are not going well for him. Death, right? Death, and obviously intimate relationship with mother, and sexuality, right? His mind is going towards turbulent things, very emotionally unbalanced, and sex. He's resolving his emotional turbulence through, you know, thinking about sex, all kinds of sex and deep things. You know, if he was a bit more mature, this could translate more into like, you know, possibly astrology or other cultic practices, you know, mysticism, deep transformation, spiritual work. Scorpio is like powerful spirituality, but through a lot of pain and struggle, right? It's that deep transformation that it's the most transformative, and it's spirituality that comes through a lot of struggle, but very powerful spirituality nonetheless. Especially if it's, you know, tied to the moon, it's going to be troublesome, but there would be great potential for, you know, even psychic awareness, because the moon is closely related to, you know, with the moon and water sign, water house, depending on what other, you know, it's got a sextile to Neptune. He could have been very psychic. Yeah, this is very spiritual, right? A sextile to Neptune conjunct the moon, intuitive. So, yeah. So early childhood definitely is going to be troublesome, and you can see like just the red lines, just a lot of difficulty, right? A lot of conflict. Aries ascendant, Uranus conjunct ascendant, exact, right? Right. So like this is a revolution, especially in Aries. So like this is like definitely a rebel without a cause, especially when young. If he was older, it would be a rebel with a cause. Past 42, and this would be somebody who's very socially aware, politically, socially active, you know, very concerned about things in the world, politics, social issues, especially with Sun also being in Aquarius, 11th house. Yeah, it could be revolutionary, starting new things, because Aries, you know, Uranus and Aries is going to want to start a revolution, sort of like Che Guevara, right? what else? It's a pretty good relationship to the sun. The sun is in sextile to the, I mean, more to the node, but pretty good relationship to Uranus and the ascendant. So his personality is very independent, very rebellious, very inspiring. Uranus in Aries is going to be extremely inspiring because Uranus is that clap of thunder, right? That the sun, it's also very accidental, Uranus in Aries. And these people can die suddenly. Like I always say, like I might one day just disappear just like that because of my Uranus in Scorpio, which is the sign of death, right on my ascendant. I could just die like that. Yeah, accidents happen, and with Uranus on the ascendant, they are prone to happen. Uranus on the ascendant is accidental, right? So again, Che Guevara shot in execution. James Dean, car accident. So all of a sudden, boom, dead. But yeah, very inspiring, very unique, right? And certainly perfect for the role of a movie called Rebel Without a Cause. And it's amazing that when you look at actors and you look at the movies they star in, and when you study astrology like I do, you can see there's always the movies that they're really good in, that they're really successful in. It's like hand in glove. It's a perfect fit, right? So that's why Rebel Without a Cause, Uranus conjunct the ascendant in Aries, it's perfect. It's a perfect role for him. It would have been interesting had he lived longer. He would have been much more worldly, much more, Uranus has a strong relationship connection to politics, social issues, things like that. Very aware of what's going on in the world and concerned about worldly stuff, things like that, as well as 11th house in Aquarius. It's also a sign of trauma, Aquarius, 11th house, and Uranus. So he was no doubt traumatized. Traumatized by his mother's death, traumatized by the abuse, which might as well talk about. So this Pluto, it has three bad aspects. I mean, one to Neptune, which is generational. That's not really a personal one. But to Saturn and to Sun, it's really bad. To Sun, it's off by 1 degree, and to Saturn by 1 degree. And it's conjunct Jupiter. Even though Jupiter is exalted in Cancer, it's a really good Jupiter. So there's some good things about his childhood, right? It's not all bad. Jupiter conjunct Pluto, molested by the priest, abused by authority figures, adults, fatherly figures, sexually abused. Sorry, Pluto can mean not necessarily sexual abuse, although it can mean sexual abuse, right? It depends. Obviously, I mean, this is in Cancer, disposited by a moon in Scorpio. So it does seem like it's tying into the sexual element. And certainly we get confirmation of that. But there is elements of, sexual abuse. And there was one other relationship he had a sexual relationship with a fatherly like figure. And later it said in the Wikipedia, somebody was like an agent or somebody in the show business. He was like a father figure. He had a sexual relationship there. So you can see Saturn is older people. Saturn can mean parents. It can mean authority figures. It can mean grandparents. It's just somebody who's in authority, especially when you're young. It's, Saturn is the furthest personal planet. So Saturn can mean old people, right? And it's often projected outwardly when you're a young person because you're not going to embody this Saturn. So obviously there's issues, abuse and sexual abuse from older people. Unfortunately. And Jupiterians, Jupiter's ruling the 9th and the 12th. So priest, right? It doesn't mean the priest wasn't, obviously, if Jupiter is exalted here, so maybe the priest, maybe it was multiple things, you know, this is kind of good and bad. Like maybe it was really helpful in some ways, but molested him in other ways. You know, it's like it can have both. Like there's nothing to saying that like somebody can't help someone at the same time hurt them in other ways. It can be a mixed bag, right? That can happen. It probably does happen. Yeah, so difficult childhood, but some good, definitely. Jupiter is square Uranus, so his own religious beliefs are definitely going to be rebellious. I don't think he was going to be very religious, even though he probably had his own connection to God. Jupiter is in Cancer, you know, Cancer being the heart, the emotions, so it's a very heartfelt wisdom kind of thing. Jupiter also ruling the 12th, so mysticism, spirituality, as well as acting and imagination and creativity. He's going to have a very Uranian or rebellious. When Uranus is square, it's going to bring out the really revolutionary side of Uranus. It's not going to go along. So his religious beliefs were certainly not orthodox. I'm getting from this, but it doesn't mean that he wasn't still, you know, connecting with God in a good way. However, there was still, you know, Pluto here. So it's definitely trauma, you know, definitely very, very difficult, you know, mixed psychology, you know, really interesting. If you try and work it all out. Mars is his ascendant lord. Mars is in Leo, so very proud. Very proud Mars. Mars is, you know, my ascendant lord is also Mars and Leo. But this is excellent for acting because it's in the 5th house and in Leo and his ascendant lord. So acting, performance, fun games, also for like, you know, cars and stuff like that. Because yeah, Leo is very fiery, Mars is very fiery, and so it's just kind of, you know, a very for men especially, it's all about the you know, really, you know, the charged up masculinity, you know, racing around in fast cars. I used to love racing in fast cars, but I kind of knew I was going to get into an accident if I didn't stop doing that. So it was a conscious choice for me to stop racing in fast cars. You know, plus I had a kid and I didn't want to kill myself or him or get in an accident. So I was like, time to stop. So I stopped. But get me in a fast car, boy, whew, I will have a lot of fun. And it's very dangerous, extremely, extremely dangerous. You know, when people have a love of racing, it's dangerous as can be. Right. So any case, yeah, 5th house is all about having fun. Mars definitely relates to the sports car, can relate to a lot of things, but definitely translates to racing. The Jupiter in the 4th, I'm thinking Jupiter is you know, abundance and excess and it does have a very physical element. 4th house is relating to early childhood, brick and mortar, but also automobiles, right? So fast cars, fancy cars, expensive cars. Definitely, I think there's that element. Plus Pluto here, the very destructive quality, destructive element. Jupiter, square Uranus, Uranus being that sudden thing, sudden accidents. I think that's pointing to, you know, accidents with things like cars, especially, you know, if he's racing with the Mars here in the 5th. That really brings that to mind for me. Yeah, Mars is also ruling the 8th house. You know, so 1st and 8th lord. Mars is which, by the way, Aries ascendants are always going to be sexual. That's why Aries Aries, I mean, it's just partly Mars's nature, but because Aries ascendant is generally going to have a eighth house Scorpio, and Mars is ruling both. So that's bringing in a lot of sexuality into Aries nature, or Aries ascendant nature, but Aries nature in general, right? Aries are very sexual, as is Scorpio, both ruled by Mars. And Mars is in conjunct Venus, exactly, to the degree, right? And here's the masculine, here's the feminine. They're not exactly meeting each other. They're conflicting in an inconjunct relationship. Inconjunctus brings in the sixth house, eighth house relationship because they are in conjunct from the ascendant. So it's very conflictual and potentially sexual at the same time. But the masculine and feminine are not in harmony, and this is adding to the bisexuality, right? Venus is ruling the second and seventh, so his relationships are very conflictual, and combative, but also sexual, and difficult relationship with his own self-worth and money. I'm sure he would be, he didn't live very long, but had he lived a lot longer, I'm sure it would have been seen that he really spends money, because that's what can happen when Mars is, connected to the second house, and either in the second house, or sometimes, like, I think, like in a bad relationship with the second house lord, it's the relationship with money is not very good, meaning that if he gets money, he'll just blow it. Not only that, there's Chiron here, square to the sun. So rejection by father, estranged from the father. Sun in Aquarius might have difficult relationship with father in general because it's opposite its domicile in Leo, right? But especially with a square to Chiron, which is points to wounds, painful wounds, rejection, and in the second, loss of self-worth, self-value. Rejection by the father leads to poor self-image, poor self-worth. Unfortunately, and that is sad for James Dean, and people, I guess, who cared about him. Certainly some healing that needs to be done about self-issues, self-worth, right? And as far as his finances go, he probably would not have had a good relationship with finances. That happens sometimes for very famous people. They blow all their money, or they get swindled out of it, or a combination of the two, and they end up poor. That would have likely happened had he not healed, until he healed this Chiron, right? Until that happens, which would have likely happened later in life. When this wound is healed, then he could build up his reserves and his self-worth, right? And stop doing, I don't know if he drank or did drugs, but probably that was an issue. Chiron, or second house, also relates to what our consumptive habits, as does Taurus in general. So I think, he was smoking a cigarette, obviously that's destructive, but drinking and drugs might have also been an issue due to poor self-image, poor self-worth, low self-esteem. So definitely self-esteem issues, worth issues, value issues, right? And blowing his money on expensive cars that he's going to race and crash. Saturn is in Capricorn, and Saturn is the strongest planet. And that's really the main reason for his success, because Saturn is the 10th house lord, also 11th house lord. So it's ruling his career, his public image, and his career success, and dispositing his sun, his Mercury, and his Venus. So it's connecting, it's strengthening all these planets. It's also in pretty good relationship with the sun. Semi-sextile is not great, but at least it's to the degree, right? Sun's connecting to the its dispositor, Saturn, which is in domicile, making a tremendous career for him. And Venus is ruling the second and third, so speaking and intellect, like doing well at school, but also the things that people need for acting are your voice and expression, right? Also fifth house. 12th house also is good. being exalted in the fourth. So from early childhood, definitely. And relationships also are going to be helped by this strong Saturn, because Venus is ruling the seventh. So the people he meets, people he, his personal relationships, people are going to like him, especially with South Node in the seventh. When South Node is active in the seventh, I have this. Friends, relationships, all kinds. It's just like, the ascendant becomes weak. So these people in the first half of life are weak as far as their individuality. Even though Uranus is here, it's not good. It's quite dangerous, actually, this combination, because he himself is not strong. He's accident prone. He's rebellious. He's kind of porous, meaning that the ascendant is not well developed. So therefore, he's taking on the influences from the external. Whoever he surrounds himself with, seventh house, he's becoming like them. He's taking on all the flavors of everyone else because he doesn't really have his own identity yet. Even though Uranus is very independent, it's like a mixed bag. It's like very rebellious, very accident prone, and not fully developed as an individual. Right? So he's taking on everyone's flavor, doesn't know who he is or what he is. He knows he's rebellious, rebel without a cause, has no cause to be rebellious because he hasn't developed his own identity. But rebellious and extreme nonetheless. And I actually have pretty much this combination. And so I'm lucky to be alive. Right? Because I did some horribly stupid things when I was young, including a lot of drunk driving and a lot of racing and just drinking to like way beyond excess. So this combination can be very, very destructive. And of course, tons of friends and girlfriends when I was younger. Right. In any case, I had an angel watching over me, I'm pretty sure. And that's what kept me alive. But yeah. Let's see. Venus. So generally good relationships, but also not such good relationships. Venus has a semi-square to the sun and to Lilith. So, I mean, certainly troubled relationships, as well as we know that, this is him, Mars, this is his body, his self, is in conjunct to Venus. So even though he's very popular, the women love him, the men love him, he loves both the men and the women, his relationships are not going great. Right? And also his fame, his public image, 10th and 11th house, are potentially quite destructive because Saturn, representing both, is opposite Pluto. So that's going to show a very destructive relationship with fame, with notoriety, with success, with people in the public, and the public relationships, abusive, destructive. But it's also going to translate into the fact that Pluto is powerful and dynamic, and so that's going to add to this already very strong 10th and 11th house. It's going to add another layer, another dimension, right? Uranus is tying in there with the sextile to the sun, Pluto with the opposition and the inconjunct. Yeah, Neptune is trine the Venus, and that's good for acting. Venus is very creative. Neptune is very imaginative. Neptune is often like the planet for Hollywood, for glamour, for acting, for movies, for cinema, because it's the imagination, it's the fantasy, and Hollywood's all fantasy. Hollywood is all Pisces and Neptune. That's really what Hollywood is. Magic, illusion, storytelling, lying, deceiving, drugs, alcohol, all that. The nodes are square Saturn by 2 degrees. So this is sort of like the destined inevitability of James Dean to become a public public icon, public figure, because the nodes of destiny is square, then, tying into the nodes, he has to do this. He has to be and Saturn in Capricorn is great. Like, I'm not gonna lie, Saturn in Capricorn is one of the best positions anyone could have. Obviously, it didn't keep him alive long enough, but it just gives this quality that is so it brings tons of respect, right? Because here you have a kind of boss man, right? A person who's like, they embody a kind of maturity, kind of a structure, an authority, they have an old spirit, right? A spirit that is like already achieved, something that is achieved already, because Saturn is like the thing that you work really hard for and you just slave over. And eventually, if you can become like, if you have a Saturn in Capricorn, that's like the karma that has already done all the hard work to be the master, to be the boss, right? So here we have like a boss man, a true, and he's young, but he's already has that, like, just think like Sean Connery has Saturn in Capricorn on the ascendant, right? And just think of like the power that Sean Connery has as an icon, as a figure, right? It's just like legendary, right? And so that's Sean Connery as an icon. Here, it's in his career, it's in his public image. And it would have been great to have seen James Dean live so much longer, right? Then we would have really seen this powerful career, legendary career take shape, which is what the 10th house is. It's the public image, the public relations, right? But that was his destiny, and eventually he would have become much more, like I said, Uranian, independent, iconic. He was already iconic, but really, powerful individual, because that's what North Node wants in the first. Really powerful, individuality that is Uranian. So like, very independent minded, very awake, very aware, but also like social, political type awareness. Let's see what else. Right. So a lot of difficult relations, with abuse and sexuality and his own identity and, his own turbulent emotional nature. Very, very sexual person, but deeply intuitive. It would have been really neat to see how he transformed over time. Let's see, Mercury is also ruling the 6th. So like, very the 6th house is a very, it's a hardworking house, great for, he could have been behind the scenes too. He could have made movies with this Mercury here and Saturn and Venus. Mercury's ruling the 3rd and 6th, so writing and editing and drafting and producing and behind the scenes would have been perfect for him as well. He would have made movies eventually and been very successful at it. All of that. Yeah, this Mars square moon is, well, on the one hand, Mars is ruling Scorpio, so that is good. The square is not good. Yeah. I think there's actually a let's see here. It's not quite opposite to Mercury, but it's almost opposite to Mercury. Mercury is ruling the 3rd house of short distance travel, but Moon actually is ruling the 4th house of automobiles. Often, I've heard they say the automobiles are 4th house. So Mars square Moon in Scorpio. I think that's a very dangerous one. And again, this also Jupiter square Uranus conjunct the ascendant. I mean, Jupiter is still Jupiter, and exalted Jupiter is good, but square to Saturn as well. I mean, and then North Node here, well, he's young. That's difficult. North Node conjunct, North Node on the angle, the nodes on the angles are very destructive, even without Uranus here, right? Janis Joplin, Amy Winehouse, Jim Morrison, and Sid Vicious, 4 with the angular nodes on the ascendant, descendant. Yeah, they die young. They can die young with these combinations. Either one, it's North Node or South Node on either side. It's very dangerous. Okay. Let's take a peek at his draconic chart. I'm going to pause it for 1 second. Apologize. Sorry about that. And just one last thing. I think I'm not sure if I said this, but 4th Lord in the 8th house, debilitated. Yeah, that's not good. That's death, early childhood, death from early childhood. So in any case, that's obvious. Alrighty. So here we get it's very similar. His draconic chart is very similar to his natal chart. Uranus is a bit more in the 12th in Pisces. It's not conjunct anything. Conjunct the node, so still that. Let's see what's different. Jupiter loses its dignity in the 3rd house, but it's in Gemini, so good for expression, not good for religion or philosophy or higher education or depression, right? Probably, Pluto's still here close to Jupiter, so he's probably depressed. Probably gets depressed easily, right? Even here with Jupiter in Cancer, even though it's exalted, it conjunct that Pluto is so it's bringing in a very, very dark element. And then Mars, which is his ascendant lord, is conjunct Pluto in Cancer. Mars in Cancer is violent and sexual, right? Because it's debilitated. Debilitated ascendant lord conjunct Pluto in the 4th. What about early death? I mean, this is so literal. Not good. Not good for a long life, long happy life, right? However, if he had escaped death, I would assume that it was due to very strong spirituality, spiritual connection, and awareness, great awareness. With Uranus conjunct the ascendant, you can be extremely aware. It's called the Great Awakener. All right. Moon conjunct South Node. Again, this is obviously draconic moon, but still significant natal South Node. It's in the 7th, but Moon conjunct South Node shows mental, early on, especially mental disturbance. So we know that both from his draconic and natal chart that mentally, emotionally, he was disturbed for sure. But this is huge, highly intuitive, right? Because South Node is very spiritual. It brings in the past. They say the past life, but a spiritual quality. South Node conjunct the Moon are very intuitive, very psychic, often, have a strong spiritual connection, or at least just very sharp, keenly sharp, right? So there was some, would really be interesting had he lived longer. Saturn is still in domicile in Capricorn. That's good. It's over Venus. Which is interesting. Venus is ruling the 2nd and 7th, and not bad for Saturn. It's restricting. It's going to restrict relationships, but potentially make him more. Saturn connecting to 7th house is considered good. So probably not very successful early on, but as he gets older, it's mixed. It could be good, not bad, especially because Saturn's in Capricorn. Sun's still in Aquarius, not too much different. Pretty much conjunct the 11th house cusp. So yeah, that's pretty much it for his draconic. Main thing is this Mars in Cancer conjunct Pluto, and Moon conjunct South Node. That's really interesting. Also, for death of the mother, South Node is loss, South Node is past. So interesting. All right, that's it for James Dean, Mr. Rebel Without a Cause. Wish he had lived longer, but this is very dangerous, very difficult. So is this. Moon 8th, Scorpio. Okay. Alrighty, guys. I hope you enjoyed that. Please hit the like button if you did. Subscribe if you have not already. Leave a comment down below. And book a reading with me. My website is macroastrology.com. My email is macrogoldmachine@yahoo.com. And let me know who you want me to do, whose chart you want me to do. All right. So thanks.